Ooh, the iPad with the trackpad. The pads are taking over. No, I don't like that. I feel weird about that. And who are these people? Why have I never heard of the information before? And I have some thoughts on the idea of the iPad getting a trackpad. So let's begin. So again, this report has come from The Information, who is claiming that, similar to the smart keyboards we currently have with our iPad Pro, Apple is working on a version that happens to sport a trackpad. And so many people are acting like that's a small little tack-on feature. No, that's like a huge fundamental shift for the iPad line, like permanently. And I haven't seen much people diving much into this. It's always like tacked on at the end of the video. Oh yeah, you know, iPad OS has mouse support now, so why not just throw in the trackpad? Okay, we're done. No, this is huge. Okay, and I don't necessarily mean in a good way unless maybe Apple's planning something here. But currently, mouse support on the iPad is like an accessibility feature. They didn't even bring it up on stage because they don't really want developers like designing apps specifically requiring a mouse. And still, even when you use a mouse on the iPad, you kind of have to emulate the way you would touch and interact with the device. So it's really meant to be there just for some people that for whatever reason can't interact with the touch display. Maybe you want to use a mouse with it, but honestly, it's not like a flagship feature. It's not something they're expecting everyone to do, really. It's just kind of, okay, if you really do need to use a mouse for something, here you go. But if they were actually to start building in trackpads to the Folio keyboards, that would mean Apple's expecting like everybody to use it just as often as they expect you to like type on the keyboard. Now, the reason I've been kind of against the iPad getting some type of native first-party built-in and like Apple endorsed mouse support, I'm not against like it being an accessibility feature for some people who can't touch the display for some reason. That's fine and everything as like a backdoor option, but kind of mainstreaming it and saying everyone's going to start using this, well, that's when the iPad has officially moved away from being a tablet and now it's just becoming a laptop. That's going to drastically affect how software is written for it. That's going to affect how developers can handle it because they can say, well, hey, most people are going to be buying that accessory and using it with this iPad, so we can design our apps with a mouse and keyboard like required to a certain extent. Maybe Apple will try to enforce that not happening, but what it essentially means is why not just throw macOS on the iPad at that point? Maybe that's what a lot of you guys want. Instead of getting, you know, these stupid mini LED MacBooks, we can just start moving macOS apps and the macOS software in a ARM format. It wouldn't be x86, so you couldn't just download anything off the web and run it. It would probably still technically be macOS, but you could only run first-party apps at first until they start moving over. But yeah, theoretically, after all of that software conversion is done, which would probably take a long time, you could just start running macOS on the iPad, and then that kind of puts the iPad in a weird category. For the longest time, Apple has not wanted mouse support, and they have not really pushed the iPad very hard at being able to replicate a desktop experience. They mainly just wanted it to be like an alternative. I know their advertising says it can replace a laptop and everything, but, you know, Apple still sells laptops. So they're not saying it can replace every single laptop. They're just saying it can replace certain use cases people have laptops for, but touch interface has always been dominant on the iPad, and they've said for the longest time, you know, they don't want to bring touch screens to the Mac, but once you start having like keyboard input, mouse input, but also a touch screen, if they're willing to put a trackpad on the iPad, my point is, why not then add touch screens to macOS? You know, like, what's the whole thought process there? I thought from the get-go, the whole mindset was iPad is built for a touch interface, and sure, you can have a keyboard, but you're still going to interact with everything through the touch screen, and if you want a keyboard and mouse, then you go with a MacBook. That's how Apple's diversified and kept things separate but strong in its own regards for the longest time, which is why I definitely have some doubts about this report. It may end up happening, but I wanted people to kind of fully grasp the hypocrisy and kind of the bizarreness of it, whereas a lot of people were just looking at it as, oh yeah, you can do that, I guess. Also, no one's talking about how expensive that would be and maybe how clunky it would be, you know? For the longest time, Apple has had solid-state trackpads on their MacBooks that don't literally click. They just kind of simulate a click when you're exerting a certain amount of pressure on the trackpad, and I don't think they could do that with like a keyboard case because they would have to stuff that whole haptic engine that they have in the MacBooks into the cover, driving up the price point for one, using a lot more power, and also probably it would be quite thick, and you know, with current Folio cases that might be pretty difficult. They would also have to change the ergonomics and the origami process of the current Folio keyboard because as it stands right now, now, you know, it covers your iPad fine, but when unfolded, there's only room for the keyboard. So if they wanted to add a big trackpad, and Apple usually likes having big trackpads, they're not about those little tiny ones. In that case, there would have to be some type of kickstand on the back of the iPad to support it or adjust it. So there would be some huge fundamental redesigns to the Folio case that would likely drive up the price. May I remind you, some people forget about this, but the current Folio keyboard case, you notice I don't have one. Reason being, it's $200, and that's just keys. They're not even backlit. There was some rumors they're working on a backlit version, but the keys are so close to the iPad's display. Anyway, can you really not see them at that distance? If they were to add a trackpad, this would be, we're talking like almost a $300, probably more, iPad accessory, okay? So you're buying $800 to $1,000 iPad Pro. Would you spend an extra $300 just so you could have a mouse experience on what is clearly designed to be touch-oriented? Maybe some of you would if it ran macOS, but the reason I have doubts about these rumors is they're saying, oh yeah, you know, this is just a simple accessory and it's probably launching with the new iPads at the end of the month. No, this is something that would be like a big deal, a big announcement if they were, you know, bringing a whole different redesigned architecture to the iPad aside from iPadOS. That's something you announce like 3 months before it actually launches at Worldwide Developers Conference or something like that. I don't think that's something you drop via website refresh unless this whole accessory is just built around, you know, helping people who can't touch the display, to which again, I have my doubts about, which is why at this point I'm like 60% sure this report is not going to end up happening just because it doesn't really line up with the message Apple's been sending for the last few years. They love the iPad and they love the MacBook, but they don't want the two to converge. Adding like inherent mouse support where you just drop your iPad on the case and just instantly whenever you touch the trackpad, a cursor appears. That's how you now have made a laptop. That's when the iPad is no longer a tablet, because most people will just default to that then and occasionally use the touchscreen, but we don't call laptops with touchscreens tablets. We call them laptops because they sit in your lap. And in my opinion, a tablet is a device where touch is the dominant and expected user input. Adding a keyboard to a tablet doesn't make it a laptop to me because you still have to interact with the display a lot. But if you create an option to where the iPad no longer needs any interface with the touch, and that's from first-party hardware, that doesn't really count as a tablet to me anymore. It's just selling a laptop with the keyboard and mouse not included. So given Apple has put so much attention, put so much care into iPadOS as a whole, I don't expect this accessory to actually happen, but I'm very curious to see how you guys feel about it. And I wish we would actually acknowledge how big a deal this would be to the iPad if it really does happen. So let me know what you're thinking on Twitter, join my Discord, and tell me more about how they would have to change the origami to support trackpad, keyboard, and it would also need some type of kickstand off the back. This is your Apple Shape here. I'll see you in the next one.